And the peace sign here, that is our artist in residence and a great longtime friend, Sundiata, D. Sundiata. And he's the creator of everything, all of our artistic stuff. So you'll see today, we're going to pretty soon, as soon as I stop talking, we're going to start a video that he created for the year. And then later on, we're going to have a video that has little clips of some of the work that we've done over the years and into 2024. So thank you all for coming. Let me send to.
There's any mistakes in that, I didn't do it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Greg Hill. So, and TC. Hi, TC. Good to see you. And so we've got TC is here, and Greg Hill, and Marilyn, and so everybody just meet everybody. We're family. We're this whole year in anticipation of huge changes that we all know about that are likely to happen. What we wanted to do was build relationships so that, and that's what we are. We know each other. We're building relationships so that when things get difficult for people, they have a community that we can, here's Mina, we can come together and support one another. So today is going to be about looking at the past, but also looking to the future. And that's where we're going to ask you, what do we need? What can we do in our platform of doing racial dialogue? I also do some on the ground work, and I'm doing some with Tom in Somerville and with Greg, but and Mina. So, but what can we do that would be helpful as a community as things any minute could get really confusing? What can we offer over the next year? So we're going to ask that during this event. Hi, Mina. Jordana, you made it. So Frank, can you start? Okay, before you start, Anastasia, could you pronounce your name for us and tell us where you are?
Anastasia.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to meet you here.
Yes, yes. Are you still in Austria or are you elsewhere?
I'm still in Austria, and I hope my status here can be prolonged one more year. So I can stay in Austria one more year, just they maybe will change some rules. For example, if I have car, I need to sell my car, for example, or buy Austrian numbers or something like that. But I think I can stay with my son.
Okay.
My status can be prolonged.
Okay. Anastasia is Ukrainian. So she's been in Austria for what?
Almost 3 years. Before I was in Poland for some time, and then I moved to Austria.
Okay. So we're happy to see you. Always happy.
I'm happy to see you because for me, you are really like great support. And this is a really place where I can go with my very relevant problems for now, because now I'm carrying all these things, all these problems, to being temporarily displaced and to have all this like integrative thing with education, with work, because I'm very limited here.
Yes. Yes, that's what we're doing. We're building community by building relationships so that we know one another well enough that when people in our extended community, as they need things, they can let us know and we can do what we can do. So Alan, hi. So let's get started, and we'll just let people come in. We're happy to see everybody. Francine, always good to see you.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with our yearly video. Most people are probably aware, but we try and create a song. Well, it's the royal we for Sundiata because he does all the work. But we try and create a song that's kind of representative of what we're going to look at or hope to accomplish for the year. And then we try and set it to a video. So this is the one that we had created for 2024, and I will share it and we will listen to it. Give me 1 second. Okay.
A racial justice series. And in my sessions on racial justice, I'm focused on the facilitator taking a stand. We're going to learn and we're going to demonstrate and we're going to practice.
All right.
Everybody who comes, we're practicing taking a strong stand for yourself.
Imagine a day when your neighbor come by with your $1 million check delivered to the wrong address. No protest, just fessed up, relaxed, and pass back out of respect. Re-envision the hood, spotlighting the good vibes and intentions many don't like to mention. What's good for the goose should be produced for the gander. Right types of all colors condemn thieves like Alexander. Everybody want their grandma safe in a space free to tour. Question you feel good about yours going to the local store. Flex your stance. Within a and a little hope. Flex your stance. And a little hope. So the world need love and hope logos. We got power to make it jump like pogos. Plan a stance, we're in a love, enhance your chance. We dance above the lance of the iron glove. Time to elevate like our name was Otis. RJC style Lotus. Been positive to notice. Wanna survive, better know this. The fake cake is what we bake. We don't have to be brothers to understand the sense and do unto others as you would have them to do unto you, your crew, your fam, favorite woman, a man. Expand the race or nationality. It should be the same mentality. Flex your stance. Random thoughts. Within a love.
Flexing your stance and answering your checks to advance.
And a little hope.
Participate and support our efforts. It is literally the village growing the nation is what we're trying to do.
Okay.
And thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Greg gave us an applause. So again, we want to thank everybody for coming. And today we are doing two things. We are celebrating the work that we've done together. It may all look simple, but this is a lot of work. But we're committed to this, so we do it. We come together and we make this happen. Because we have us, the Racial Justice Collaborative, all of you, we have a shared commitment to justice, inclusion, and equity, irrespective of what people are now saying about DEI. We're committed and we're going to remain committed. That's the foundation of our strength as a community. So today we're going to reflect on 2024. It's been a year of challenge, but really every year is a year of challenge, right? It's all years of challenge, especially those of us in the African American, the Black community. We're resilient because we have faced lots of challenges, so we can even smile, always smiling in the face of challenge. And when we come together, as we're doing today, across differences and struggles, we are unstoppable. And in our message today of hope and change, that sounds like Jesse Jackson, right? Hope and change. We underscore the importance of unity. Like I was saying earlier, it is building relationships to build community, to find out the places where we can have solidarity, unity, because unity will help us create our shared vision for a better future. And because hope alone is not enough, we call on determination. Hope must be paired with determination to meet our community's needs, amplify unheard voices, and remove barriers to justice. And I'm looking here at Greg because he exemplifies this. He's always moving forward, always with his eye toward justice.
Thank you, Diane.
Together, you're welcome, Greg. Together, we are more than just a community. We are a movement driven by hope and determination. And because we know that in the face of every challenge, we will rise. We've got today a video. This is one that was created for today. This is not the year-long video we just saw. But again, our artist in residence, Sundiata, has put together this video. And it is a video of pull together some of the events over the years that have been exemplary, that we remember. So it's a highlight of events over the past years. So Frank, if you can prepare the video. Again, we're showcasing RJC accomplishments, and we want to thank Sundiata. Sundiata, take yourself off mute and just say a word, because you've been here from the beginning and working with us time after time, creating videos and songs. We had a kind of a song, but he's got songs that he's created for the RJC over the years. So say a word about this video that we're going to see today.
Okay. Well, this video was originally supposed to reflect mainly 2024, the trials and tribulations and triumphs of 2024. As I was creating it, I saw that there was a lot of things from the past that people said that were relevant and that kind of fit into what we were dealing with in the year's theme. So I added a little bit of that, tried to make it a musical experience as well as something that you could think about. All the hard work that Diane and the rest of the RJC has been doing couldn't really be shown in a video of 15 to 20 minutes, but I just tried to give it a flavor. you know, give you a chance to feel the vibe for a little bit.
Thank you. That's what it is. And we're going to encourage people as they watch this video, if you can jot down particular reflections or highlights that they think of, because many of you have been with us for years, and some of you have been with us this whole year. So if you jot down any kind of comments or highlights or things that you think are reflective of what we need to revisit during 2025. So just jot down any thoughts. And Frank, if you are ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Okay. And I apologize if there is a gray box, I guess there's up at the top. My docking station decided to die like 15 minutes before the meeting. So I've gone from 3 screens to 1. So I'm trying to get everything done the best that I can, but bear with me. And here we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, we're just going to get started. And I just wanted to welcome everybody on behalf of the Racial Justice Collaborative.
So many times we judge things based on the present without considering the fact that some of that perspective came from the past.
And this has been part of an ongoing series of events for the year.
Who came before us, all of our ancestors, just send out vibes of love and appreciation.
U.S. slavery itself, the production, the entrepreneurs in slavery, they created a lot of the accounting and operational systems that companies use today. And I won't go into those details, but all of that information is available. And here's, for example, an annual record of a planter. You see it says the planter's annual record of his Negroes. This is in 1850, and the value of the people at the time. We need to come to terms with the importance of this to really understand the magnitude of the theft and how whites, whether purposefully or not, continue to benefit fully from what was created. Next slide, please.
But those of us who potentially are less empowered, those of us who have historically been less available to access those resources, certainly live out our lives with this tax around fearfulness about being able to access resources. And that's what I think lies at the heart, at least to some degree, lies at the heart of why we are unable to talk about white supremacy as white supremacy. It is because at the heart of it is this idea that we are all clamoring for resources.
It is an immense amount of psychological, emotional work that needs to happen in order to get people, Black people and others and whites, to overcome that, to look that in the face. Information alone won't do. It's, again, that's not the issue, in my opinion, in my experience.
I think that there's a lot of all of these are preparing us, and this has been part of an ongoing series of events for the year.
But I also am part of the Racial Justice Collaborative because I do feel so strongly about Diane's call for dialogue, and that how much it's helped me personally, just talking about race and talking about my own whiteness and my place in race and privilege and all that, which has brought me to, yes, of course, I should pay reparations. America should pay reparations.
It's these opportunities to learn together and grow together and sit in the fire together. And Frank is going to talk about this whole thing is to prepare us for the next conversation. So,
I know that some people thought there was no fire. I'm sure some people thought there was a lot of fire. So again, it depends on where you're at, and all of these are preparing us, and this has been part of an ongoing series of events for the year.
In the history of African peoples being enslaved in the United States, despite this going all the way to the pre-state history of just the 13 colonies, it exploded in value and exploded in wealth at a certain point. This point in the history of enslaved peoples in the United States would mark a vast change and ramping up of the people needed to work in terms of production of resources like cotton in order to maintain certain needs.
Chattel slavery's legacy continues to influence American society, as evident in ongoing racial disparities in wealth, education, healthcare, criminal justice, and other aspects of life. The experience of slavery and resistance against it has profoundly shaped African American culture and identity.
Again, families were torn apart because of this. This, when you read it, sounds cold and calculating and economics, but basically this is what happened to people. They were taken by the bank. Who knows what happened to them, where they were sent, and so forth. An interesting note please the source here. So there's this article, but also in New York City there's something called the Inside Out Tours, and they run a New York City slavery and Underground Railroad tour that really links Wall Street to slavery in a way that probably many people don't know. And out of that, I also was able to confirm that New York City probably received 40% of all the US cotton revenue through money from its financial institutions, shipping, and insurance companies. And again, it goes back to Pharaoh's point that no one in the North can just look at the South and poo-poo them as backward, former enslavers. The whole of the North is completely engaged, or was completely engaged, and today I would argue is still engaged because they grew from this.
Spoke with a loud voice. So I don't think the Black community's ever been weak. It may have not had, violence is not always the answer, nor is nonviolence always the answer.
It found that most white women support a national reparations policy, and then along with 44% of white men. Then it found that 88% of Black voters and 60% of Latino voters would support reparations. And so this may come as a surprise to you, but I think it was all in the way that the question was phrased. So the question was phrased as reparations in the forms of investments into the Black community for affordable housing, healthcare and wellness, educational scholarships, loan forgiveness, and business development. And so support dropped when the question was just around cash payments. And so I think that's kind of the debate on like what reparations is and what it should be. I think that should be determined from those who were harmed.
Conversation on sort of practicing the resilience.
And I've also heard pushback on always looking at the systemic, but I like to address that by saying the systems are not without people. There's people functioning in the systems, and that's how the systems function. So when I say systemic, it means addressing the people that are in the systems and perpetuating the systems, that either create or sustain or maintain privilege, and that, unprivilege and disadvantage others.
Resilience.
Let the power of this earth spot now just flow through your body.
Class was kind of a base for racial divisions in Britain, but same results, 10% more wealth for white people than people of color in Britain. That was really interesting. But we also get mixed up on class in the United States.
And then we got into a conversation about, the power dynamics that go into who controls media, who controls culture, and how that affects people who are trying to really represent the cultures that they're from, that they care about, and that are connected to their communities. And so this is just to show you how this panel idea came to be. And for myself, I work in arts and culture. And so I really believe in the power of music and any sort of cultural expression in really illuminating systemic barriers. But
So I'm an active member of the Racial Justice Collaborative. I'm also a member of the Artist Collective Feminist Futurists. These are important topics. And the title of my talk is Black Artists Transport history to the present.
What you mean by a global sense?
Yeah, well, you know, when you look at hip hop around the world, according to the United Nations, hip hop is the fastest growing culture in the world.
The resilience.
Because you have people everywhere. There are people on the planet. People are expressing hip hop in their own way because it allows them their individual expression outside of any kind of system. You know what I'm saying?
Resilience.
Solo world need love and hope logos. We got power to make it jump like pogos.
Black soldiers that were putting their lives on the line and fighting in combat against the enemies of the United States of America are returning to be brutalized and abused by the very same country that they had just devoted their lives to protecting.
Someone brought up a beautiful visual of there's a volcano and there's all this magma and this hot, but having it in a way where we can feel the heat without the explosion and the injury.
Nobody wants to sit in the fire more than I do. But what we want is we want people to come to the fire and bring themselves and be able to stay. But it's giving people some resources. Everybody's in a different place. And so we're giving people the kind of resources that allows them to practice and then come to these sitting in the fire events and stay.
Just a little trigger warning, if you're a white person, this workshop may well trigger your defensiveness, and it may already have. And if you're a Black or Indigenous or other person of color, it may trigger your frustration or despair or rage hearing.
I've had Malcolm said it best. Conflict is as American as apple pie. The war, the Revolutionary War, what was that? Conflict. The war between capital and labor, conflict. Just about conflict. In terms of, you talk about, I think 4th and 5th grade, you get American history. And you read the Articles of Confederation. It was about how do these rich folk run stuff and keep poor folk out of it. Conflict.
You've got cigarettes, marijuana cigarettes in a pack, and we're still in prison and can't be involved in the industry.
Other industries called it's called an inclusion rider, and there's been some activists, actors, and I hope some athletes that are also going to involve themselves in this, which is the enormous amount of money being made. Some of it should be distributed back towards people who are being, I would say, unfairly disadvantaged.
So, you help build an industry, they lock you up, they make it legal, and then who benefits? A bunch of rich white folks. Philip Morris and those guys swoop in, and you've got cigarettes, marijuana cigarettes in a pack. And specifically how we can get more Black and brown people to participate in that industry and legally benefit from it.
Sounds like it's going to be some high concepts being discussed.
The topic of scientific racism, and particularly psychiatry, is part of that schematic. And in my view, it's probably one of the most brutal and toxic forms of anti-Blackness, which is what Dr. Bembe is going to be discussing, using a timeline from the 1700s through to the present. When you think of the term gaslighting, a lot of you may have heard that contemporary term. You're going to recognize gaslighting amongst many other things in the white psychiatrists and white psychiatry.
The slavery and the subsequent, almost 200 years of economic and social brutality, the effect it had on descendants and the descendants today. But it also, we have to look at it again. What did it do? The wind in the back, the economic wind in the back of white people, white enslavers, their descendants, their businesses, and the growth of their businesses after emancipation.
Redlining and the GI Bill is something that goes very, very closely together. So the term redlining comes from a common act on drawing maps, where you would put red lines around specific issues of, or around specific locations of danger, in this case, of course, referring to locations that were primarily occupied by Black citizens. So you would have these places be highlighted by red lines, where you would be able to avoid benefiting these locations in regards to housing opportunities that would be developed there, in regard to housing loans that could be offered to various locations there, et cetera, et cetera. And you would have areas that were primarily inhabited by white citizens be outlined in green, where all of these benefits and things, many of which are included under the benefits offered to veterans by the GI Bill, would be included in those green lines. So to this day, the term redlining, it pertains to that spirit, pertains to that aspect of highlighting and singling out areas of Black communities and separating them from benefits.
This is a white person's job to begin really fashion in your mind a different paradigm about where the problem lies.
Welcome everyone. Today, we're introducing affinity groups and explaining their purpose in building stronger, more understanding communities.
The idea of affinity groups might be new to some of you, so let's start by explaining what they are. Affinity groups are spaces where people who share a common racial or ethnic background can come together to discuss their unique experiences and concerns.
These groups provide a safe environment to explore identities, unpack experiences with racism, and prepare for broader multiracial dialogues.
This helps us prepare for conversations with other racial groups.
We work on understanding our biases and the impact of systemic racism, which helps us become better allies.
So if you're a white person, I want to invite you to remember a time when you felt racially defensive with a Black person. It may have been at your workplace or in your school or on the street. Maybe someone was challenging you about your whiteness or your privilege in some way.
You know, we're talking here a combination of both personal work that needs to be done and how we can help people do personal work and how we can do personal work on ourselves. But there's also the larger power question.
How do I maneuver myself through this maze?
Many topics, many ways to drop it. Many topics, many ways to drop it.
And welcome to Celebrating Juneteenth, a holiday that celebrates de facto freedom for African Americans. The story of Juneteenth. Juneteenth was initially celebrated by newly freed Black church communities in Texas in 1866. However, it would quickly spread across other similar communities in other southern states.
So we hope that you will come out and bring some of your newfound skills and sit with us, because there will be definitely some fire then.
Just take a breath in and be grateful for the breath you're taking in. Inhale. And then just exhale. And just be aware of that life-giving breath. Bring a golden light into that heart space and feel love. Love. Just love. Just okay. Thank you, Catherine. She was giving us an applause, and we appreciate that. Renee is here. Hi, Renee. So we're really happy to see everybody. We're happy to see people we haven't ever seen before here, and we're happy to see people that are coming back over and over. So let's just reflect for a minute, or I like to do this. Let's take a deep breath. Take a deep breath in. And when you're ready, exhale. that's just a regrouping opportunity to, so we don't just fast skip by everything, like nothing's important, we're just skipping. Everything's important. And so we're taking a moment to have a breath. And while you're reflecting on, you've seen 2 videos and we're all here together. So any of this today, today it's all about you. It's all about us. There's no you and me, there's us. And so here we all are, and we want to hear from you in your reflections, or just maybe just what made you want to come today? Or there's something that is burning on your heart. It's on everybody's heart. We're all watching the time go by on the dock of the bay, watching the time go by. And we know we need to come together. And so we want to hear what you have to say about that. And Nancy, I'm glad you're here. We hope to hear from you today. Nancy's a core member of the Racial Justice Collaborative, as many of us are. So as you think about, or just not think, let's not think. Thinking is overrated and overused. Let's feel what resonated with you today, what resonates with you right now. Was there a moment or a project that you saw that Sundiata pulled out projects? He had some titles, so if you want to go back, all of these events that we've had over these years, 4 years now, they're all available. We recorded everything, just like we're recording this today. So if you want to go back and see the whole thing, you can do that. If you want more information about that, you can contact me. I'll put you in contact with Sundiata. But what resonated? And most importantly, for today, as you reflect on the past, what do we need more of? What do you need more of? What do we need to do? As the Racial Justice Collaborative, we're a dialogue group, multiracial dialogue group, doing dialogue in mixed race groups. That's very important to us. So what do you need more of? Or what really stands out for you from the Racial Justice Collaborative? Nancy, you have unmuted, so.
Well, one thing, this is just one strand, but what Mark said about information alone doesn't do it, in my experience. And so I'd like to unpack that. I wish Mark would present to us sometime next year what he thinks the keys are to some kind of movement, momentum, change. If it's not going to be just what I like about the Racial Justice Collaborative is dialogue, Black leaders, white, Black, and all racial group dialogue. But I like the combination of information and processing things. But then what Mark said just really rang a bell. Okay, so if it's not just information, what more should we be pinpointing?
Okay, thank you. We will communicate that with the Racial Justice Collaborative and with Mark.
Great. So I'm interested in everyone's ideas and
yes,
feel.
You mean Mark Saunders, right?
Yeah, Mark Saunders.
Okay, of the Racial Justice Collaborative, yes.
Right.
Okay. So as you can see, we want you just to speak up. This is not, you can raise your hand if you want to. If I can see you, I will call on you. But just, you don't have to do that. Just take off, unmute yourselves, and we're just going to engage today in dialogue. What else? Participate actively.
Diane, I found the scales fell off my eyes this past year about generational wealth. and how the lack of it has robbed the Black and brown communities of, being able to buy their own homes, to live where they would like to live. That really rang a bell with me. And the fact that there were learning about Northern banks who profited so greatly from enslavement, 40%, I believe the woman mentioned, was another revelation for me. And these all point to the fact that in the culture wars that we experience, there's a great fear of truthful history, which is why they want to vanillaize, if you will, the curriculums in the schools, and why they want to ban history books, anything that does not make, certain strata of white people comfortable in their skin. So it's a fear of truthful history that I think we are, that rears its ugly head, especially starting in January 2025. So this has been a great education for me. And I thank the RJC for bringing it to us.
Thank you, Greg.
And
that's very current.
Yeah, but thanks for bringing that up, Greg, because it also fits in with what Alan said in the video that we just watched, because he was talking about how it's systemic. It's the people that create the machines and feed those machines that keep it going. So like Pharaoh said with redlining, where there are these systems in place to keep Black and brown people from having the same abilities that other folks have. And it's not happenstance. It's not just bad luck. I mean, it's designed to be that way. So this machine runs very efficiently. And there are lots of people that buy into it and keep it running that don't necessarily understand what that is. I mean, I just go to work and I do my job and I collect a paycheck and I come home. But the industry that you're involved in has an agenda that you may or may not know that you're helping out. And when you start seeing all those pieces together, whether there's redlining, there's the GI bills, and there's the war on drugs, which is incarceration. So all those things together is what makes things where we are today. And so having that veil removed and you start connecting the dots, then it becomes easier to see the machine behind what's going on. So I really appreciate that comment, Greg.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. As I'm waiting, I try not to talk all the time, but I hear things and it strikes something. It's what Alan said in the video, and I want to underscore that and connect it to what Frank and Greg just said. It is a system. There's a system with an intention, and that system is going in a particular direction. But that system, we call it a system, but it's hundreds and millions of individuals doing their job, as Frank said, every day within the system. And it's really easy, and it's even valued. People want to get raises, they want to get promotions, and sometimes, a lot of times, they have to make a split decision. Do I turn my head once again and just keep on going, or do I say something about something I notice, or do I keep moving? And that's where the individual comes in. But that's complicated. Under our current structure, we have to work to have a home or a shelter. We have to work for our food. That's just the system. It doesn't have to be that way, but this is called capitalism, right? So we have to do that. And so when things may happen that threaten our livelihood, we might choose to not, we're not going to keep looking because we don't want to be outside the system. So we have empathy, but maybe talking about that, we can come up with something. And in my opinion, we're at the place where we're creating new systems because this current system is collapsing. Renee, you have your hand.
Hey, good afternoon. So I'm sorry I'm late. I'm in my car because I'm actually at the very end of moving, but I needed to jump on and I'm like, oh my God, it's 1 o'clock. I appreciate what you guys do, right? I appreciate the seeds that are planted. I appreciate the peeling back of layers, like into an onion, that when you think you got it, there's something that hits you that really makes the tears flow and makes you understand things at a deeper level, right? I came in actively with the Agassi meeting, which was really interesting. It brought back a lot of things to memory, a lot of loves that I need to tap back into, one of those being music. And my relationship with Diane in general has been eye-opening. Maybe you may not know, she's been working with my nonprofit, not my profit, nonprofit, but the nonprofit I work at, because I'm not putting that out into the universe. I'm not going to be running that particular nonprofit. But anywho, with a women's empowerment group. And I think a lot of this move had to do with me empowering myself to know that I deserve better. I have always been a rule follower. I cross T's and I dot I's, but I said, screw this. I'm breaking the lease for my own sanity, my own health, my own peace of mind. And so some moves were made by the office here. And I was talking to somebody, I was looking at a roommate situation, and I was like, I have 2 weeks. And she said, well, what are you going to do? You only got 2. And I said, you know what? All I know is as many times as I've moved, God has never let me down. And I have moved, I got the keys to an absolutely amazing apartment and moved within 7 days, which is a record for me. And the funny thing is, Diane, the kitchen on my vision board is very, very, very similar to the kitchen I now have. So I appreciate everything you guys do. I personally, and it may have happened and I just wasn't around, I would love to see some of these meetings in person. I think the energy when you have a bunch of people in the same room can be extremely powerful. Not that this isn't, but sometimes when you're able to, you know, if someone's having a hard time understanding something, you could just kind of rub their back. There's power in, you know, that connection. I would love to see these conversations kind of going in, and again, you guys might have already been doing this, I don't know, in a direction of younger people, because I think they have a one love, I don't see color, everybody's amazing, but I think they have the wherewithal to understand and want to know the history. I think they want to know it, and they want to know what's really real, not what they're being taught in school. I was very, very, very fortunate, and I'm not saying this because Larry is here, but Larry taught us everything. We knew everything. You know, like, okay, you're a Black person and you get stopped by the cops. This is what you do. I can't say that other history teachers would tell us that, right? It was social justice back then in the 80s when like I said before, thought Cambridge was a bubble and everybody loved themselves and each other and it was just, you know, kumbaya. But I would love to see the opportunity to let younger people in on this. And my thought is their power of social media and getting the word out could take this to another level where you're getting paid and adding staff and all that stuff. Because I think this generation, whether it's the late teens to the 20s, early 30s, they have an idea of what this world is supposed to look like. And they are going to kick ass to do it because that's what they want to see. Us sometimes we're like, oh, it was a good run. I mean, once you hit your 50s and 60s, with the election, my mother's like, I just want to see what's going to happen. My mother's also 84. Hopefully she's not watching this, but she's able to kind of say, I've lived through a lot. And my hope is that the younger people who get this food, is what I hear, is able to nurture them in a way that say, if we don't do something, what is this going to look like for our children? And if not somebody else, it might as well be me. And they actually make moves towards everything that the RJC is desiring to get out into the universe. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm going to put my headset on. I will be with you guys. But I've got to get out of this apartment and drop these keys off.
Thank you, Renee. Thank
Sure.
you. So I have to comment on a few things. This Racial Justice Collaborative, before the Racial Justice Collaborative, we were we were doing Let's Talk About Race, and that was local in Somerville through the Somerville Media Center. But then the pandemic just upheavaled all of that. But there's always the silver lining. And for us, the silver lining was we established the Racial Justice Collaborative. And so as you look at this screen and you see people, they're all over the place. And so that's the advantage of doing this through Zoom. We can have members, even members of all of our board members, none of them live here except for me. And Mark is also a board member. So there's that. But we're also doing work locally. I'm doing work locally. Farrell is working with me locally. Catherine works with me locally. So we're doing things in Somerville. And so Renee, you spoke some things into the universe. And you spoke about young people, and you spoke about doing things in person. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to call, people tell me to stop calling on people. So I'm not calling on you, Tom King, but I'm just mentioning that in the spring, Tom and I, he invited the collaboration of the Racial Justice Collaborative to do just that, to bring envisioning to Somerville. And so we're going to be reaching out broadly, and he's bringing young people, young college people and artists into this collaboration. So Renee, we hear you, and we're doing that. And Larry lives here. So there's all of us, and Greg. So Tom, I'm not putting you on the spot.
But you are, Diane, so that's okay.
You say something about your vision that you invited me into.
Well, that's so kind of you, and I'm so grateful to be joining the group today and to be working with you, and also just hearing about we're watching the two videos and hearing about some of the projects of the last few years, some of which I knew about, some of which I didn't, and they're all really wonderful, and I mean, I think what I could probably say at this point is that I'm really resonating with a couple of things that I've been hearing so far. Diane, you started us off thinking about how do we share what we already know about how to be resilient in the hard times that are coming, and what are the tools and that we can share perhaps with young people to help them through this movement. I was just in a conversation on Thursday with a queer artist about precisely this, thinking in this case about trans and trans of color people, and how can artists who were working in the 80s and 90s and dealing with the HIV crisis and so many other things at that time, bring that knowledge to bear on what's coming now. So I've really been resonating with that connection between the elders and the youth at this particular moment, and also with how to use art to facilitate that transmission of knowledge, and not only the transmission of knowledge, but to just make space for joy and beauty and togetherness. We know, for example, from studies that the strongest predictor of surviving a crisis is knowing your neighbors. So how do we use art to build those connections? In a real nutshell, what Diane and I have been talking about, and I'm really looking forward to, is using art to create conversations about growing community and growing resilience in Somerville, Massachusetts, where Diane and I both live. I think Greg as well, and this is in connection with a place that Greg and I are also involved with, the Somerville Community Growing Center, which both grows native plants, but also grows, more relevantly here, grows community. And Somerville is a sanctuary city. So one of the things that we're going to be really, I think, concerned about in the coming year is how to actualize and really put into motion the sanctuary status of Somerville, given the threats against migrants and immigrants in the coming year. So just in a nutshell, really want to hear about how we can, and I really loved Dee Sidiata, your videos, how can we use that creativity to make this happen? So thanks, Diane.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks,
TC?
Tom.
If I may, I like the point of how systems work collectively to do certain things. And in the Republic of the United States, how faith traditions have been co-opted to support a demonic agenda. David Krauss talks about how capitalism influenced American pulpits to undergird a capitalistic agenda that was anti-worker, anti-family, anti-everything. And so for me, the information is really helpful for me when I go into my little nerd box and say, how does this stuff line up? How does it all intersect? And I believe that it does. And because that it does, we've seen it in this last election. Folk really feel that they're oppressed. They want to be rich. And even if I'm comfortable with my trinkets, I ain't calling no shots. I think Huxley or Orwell talked about the soma break. So your money is your soma. And you get to become comfortable. And you said it, I want to look away, but you don't realize you next. You next. But it's the illusion that I have all the comfortable trinkets, so I don't want to get my hands dirty. But not only are your hands dirty, your hands are bloody. But because you've chosen to look away. You've chosen to hear the tune that the emperor is playing, and it's to your own demise. And that's an uncomfortable acknowledgement. So we see so much addiction in terms of alcohol, pornographic. People are like, I see it going on, but I don't want to say anything because it's going to upset my own personal apple cart, and then I will be on the street. But if you look on the street, there may be solidarity, there may be comfort in numbers. And lastly, I had a communist brother who said, it's not what Mr. say, it's what Mr. do or misdo. And if you looking away, you're looking away at your own demise.
Right.
Right.
Could I say another thing? Because I
Yes.
might not be able to have Wi-Fi for all of this. Okay, I think a helpful theme for next year would be something like going beyond lashback. In other words, a lot of us don't see the constant systemic reaction to any kind of Black or brown progress with the new force of policies, government, social, economic, political policies to beat back down people of color in the United States through the new repressive laws. And I just want to give one quick example that leapt into my mind as people were talking today. A lot of Black people did buy houses a lot during, the 40s and the 50s. There was economic progress, but then the government decided to build highways through virtually every single successful Black community in America, all the business communities. There's at least 20 towns where it was just razed to the ground because those were the poorer areas. So all these homeowners lost their homes because of the transportation bills. Then, as Black leaders started to have some power in the culture, the war on drugs was started to get a whole lot of Black people in prison, especially Black males. You can just look through all of our history as to how every time there's some kind of progress, there's huge government forces, forces pitted against progress, and it's systemic. And I think if we could say, how can we transcend, transform, or push back against lashback, that would be a great theme. So we could see how this pattern is and how now Trump is his ideas are another huge effort to squash any kind, because Barack Obama was elected, and now we have this huge lashback at every level, state level, just like the books, not in the history being, sanitized. So I think that might be a great theme for next year because it addresses what's going on, but it gives it a historical arc. Okay, just an idea. Thank you.
If I may, let me make my last point.
Yeah.
David Krauss said something about why there was the use of faith traditions. The social safety net impacts everybody. There's the illusion only Black and brown folk use that safety net. This man has said he wants to remove that. Do you know how that's going to impact white folk? So the social safety net, whether it's for children who don't have fathers or seniors on the other end, there's no access to socialism in terms of public schools, public roads. It impacts everybody. So when people feel comfortable saying Black and brown, but it's going to impact everybody.
That's right.
So, with that being said, I wanted to piggyback a little bit. When I was making the video, one of the things I was thinking about was collective mind. The collective mind, the way that all of us see things and the experiences that we all go through really come back to what is the true purpose of life? What is life? Are we separate in this thing, or are we somehow interconnected in the whole, the whole woven thing? So to bring other people's perspectives and their thoughts is showing the power of a group. The group doesn't have a mind by itself. It's a bunch of collective, just like I think it was Alan said it in the video, just like a system works. A systematic thing works through people working in those actions. So the same thing is with this organization. So I think if we all continue to build, continue to do what you're doing in your communities and try to educate yourself more and bring that back to the table, then we can do something. Last thing, manifestation is something that I heard spoken about as well. As a collective mind, understanding that manifestation happens from the mind first, right? Thought travels a couple billion miles a second. So if we're thinking the same thing at the same time, some of these fears and things that we have of what could be or what may happen can disappear. The fear of it can disappear, and then the solution can appear.
Sundiata, I can't believe how many things you just said that I would like to comment on. I'll just start with the last thing. And then this is where we can really come together um, we all have enough belief in what we're talking about to be here. And so just imagine if we've got people on the screen and other people, that if we were all deciding that there's a list, just say 3 things that we're all going to just start with focusing our awareness on, noticing, noticing, and then gathering information and bringing it back in like a clearinghouse. And then we decide. So we're aware and we decide, and then we become committed to something. If it's just this number of people, but it will be more because everyone here knows other people. Then we bring our collective vision and because what is vision? Power. So we bring our collective power and then decide together to do something or to whatever. I mean, however we decide. But that's the key to the lashback that Nancy's talking about. The key to it is that we don't just, and the key to what Alan said about, the people, they look and they turn their head, but there must be some things. I understand when people are afraid to lose their job, but there must be some short steps before that that we could do, that you don't have to lose your job, or you bring your ideas in and we find a way in it so it's not you losing your job, but together. And that's the goal. Now, to me, Frank has this idea. This is his idea. It's about building relationships. But before I continue forever, Anastasia, thank you for helping me with the pronunciation, has her hand raised, and I'd like to hear.
Do we have more time? Because I don't know. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
I like very much what you're talking about, and I thought I had a group recently. It was a group of people traumatized with the war. It was topic about post-traumatic growth, and we understood in this group that it's really impossible to have post-traumatic growth while we are split. And now when I think about why it's good to be here in this collaborative, I thought about that because in this group we found that the best thing we can do for now is just to know ourselves more as like human beings. What is disturbing me? What is hurting me? What is in my very human being essence? Where is my direction as an intention as a human being? And I think here I have exact this place where I could where I can bring this kind of things and where we can unite around these things. And this is like a first movement to not, because sometimes I can experience myself so small in front of some situations. For example, what we have now in Georgia, when I look at these protests now in Georgia, I remember because I was participating in 2 revolutions in Ukraine in 2004 and 2014. And a lot of feelings arise inside me. And I'm not sure that Georgia can do the same that we did, because we every time we got what we want in these protests. And now when I experience some kind of situation like that, I can feel so small that I can't do anything with it. I can't influence anyhow. But what I can do is to be here and just focused on these very important things, which is disturbing me. And somehow it's happening. Somehow I developing as a human being and something changing in the field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So something will change in the field as we raise our awareness and come together. Something will change.
But is that Georgia, the country, or the state?
I think,
Is she in the
Anastasia, the country of Georgia?
Country, you mean I talked about Georgia, that now protests in Georgia.
Yeah.
She
In the
means
United
you
States,
talking about
there's a state called Georgia in the United States.
Okay, understood.
right. So you're speaking of the country.
Yes, I'm speaking about country, and they have similar situation that we had before because of they want to be part of European Union, and Russia just tried to isolate them, like regular story.
So Georgia's a hectic no matter where you go.
Yeah. So Alan has his hand raised. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody for kind of inspiring most of what I'm going to say. But so just it's going to be responding to your original prompt, Diane, and also to just some other things that I've heard. So I wrote an op-ed that was not put in any of the papers, but it was basically talking about those of us with privilege, and then I have qualified that those of us with privilege enough. You know, I think there's privilege, and then there's people with enough privilege that they could say, oh, well, I'm not privileged, but that they're privileged enough or we're privileged enough. And I think it's really building on what Tom was talking about and that what you mentioned in terms of Greg and Tom, what you're doing. And then also Anastasia, if I've said it wrong, I apologize. But it's, you know, it's what should this space be? And I see two things. And one is kind of what Anastasia said, which is, you know, it's a place to come and sort of, you know, what I would say, discuss, I would call burning issues for any individual in the collaborative, for any of us that joins in, that this is a place for us for, quote, hot topics or something that, you know, without it being a process workshop or conversation, but really a place to sort of support an individual through, you know, something going on, but in a more tangible sense with what Tom was talking about and what you were talking about, Diane, that those of us with privilege enough, that I think there's going to be enough that we need to respond to with action, even if it's from this small group or brainstorming about action to support efforts that may be going on around amnesty, not amnesty, but going on around safe havens, sanctuary. So, you know, if it's sort of to be a little bit more action oriented, even if the first part of that action is discussion. And I will always say that, you know, discussion can be action too. It changes the way I think, which changes the way I act. And certainly participating here and hearing from others changes the way I act and think. However, I think there may be tangible stuff that we just can't sit in this privileged or privileged enough space here and not, you know, say, okay, we need to do more. Even in Racial Justice Collaborative, even within a Zoom space, we can do more. And I don't know how that translates sometimes, but that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. That's where we are. We're the next subject on the next topic on the agenda for today, the closing topic, is a call to action. And it's called Building Together. So engagement, activity. Before we do that, so that's a highlight. Before we do that, I just want to also bring in that the Racial Justice Collaborative is dedicated at our core to awareness of and eradication of anti-Blackness. So we can undergo a lot of topics and because they're all connected. It's like we've been talking about today. You know, if not us, then who? And if not you, then me, and then the next person. But what I've seen over years of being involved and I'm looking at Larry because I'm sure Larry sees it too from his position as Black history teacher, and that is that there's been many times when these kind of discussions come up, and then we move away from of elimination of anti-Blackness. So I'm dedicated to not allowing Black people one more time to get overlooked and overwhelmed with the interest of everybody else. So yes, for all of these things, but we're going to keep ourselves in our awareness connected to anti-Blackness. Also has, we've got to talk about that. We've got to eliminate that in all of its forms, because I'm convinced that if we just focused on anti-Blackness, we would touch all the things that we're talking about. And why is that? Because white supremacy. So I'm gonna, here it is over here in my right hand. You can't see it, it's off the screen, but I got white supremacy in my right hand. But the target, the core target forever of white supremacy is Blackness. And so everybody else, everything else, we got anti-Asian sentiment, we've got anti-everybody and but it's Blackness. So as we're uncovering and making ourselves whole, Blackness, if we don't deal with anti-Blackness, all this stuff keeps collapsing and coming back and coming back. So I'm off my stand here. Now, because a call to action, we're future building. We're building a future. And I'm convinced I was in law school and I had a professor who was a professor of philosophy of law, and he was from Brazil. And he talked about the Brazilian Revolution. And he said the people that engage the revolution are not the people who are going to run things when the revolution is over. So he said that as they stream through and they're making changes, and the revolutionaries all around are people coming up with ideas. And then because then as they're tearing things through, the power gets thrown up into the air. And so as the revolutionaries go through, the people who have been sitting around, not just sitting around, they're planning like we're doing. We're going to do this. They're planning on the edges. They run to the center, and then the power comes down on them. We want to envision a future, and we want to engage that future. And so that's who we are. That's what we're doing. This what we have is created. It's not a natural, God-given way that things have to be. And so there's a time when you can recreate, and this is the time. So thank you. And now I'm off that one. So I would like to, you don't have to in this moment, but I'd like to ask people to do two things. Now, we were going to have small groups, but you see, we just liked it so much, or at least I did. I loved this so much that we passed by the small groups so that we could all hear everything together, because we really are all one, right? We're all one spirit. And so we're all learning together. So if you have any more ideas about what kinds of topics for next year, put them in the chat, raise your hand right now, come forward, say it, or you all know my email address, dianemwong@gmail.com. Send me ideas. We're going to be over the next, rest of the year, putting a package of ideas for 2025. So we need your participation.
And I would say,
Okay.
make it personal, not just send me ideas that you think is great for a topic, but what are you specifically interested in? Because that was the whole part of trying to do this year-end thing and gauge what we've done, what we're looking to do, what are people interested in. I mean, I would personally be interested in this is what I would like to see, and not just, I think we should work on, these things, because those topics will get covered, but we're looking for a more personal, me, myself, I am interested in this, because that can help us determine what to do.
Marilyn?
I would like a presentation on what Black people wish white people knew, what Black people wish white people would do, and maybe a third one. But that would be very helpful. That's always helpful to me, to hear from people that have a different experience, that need white people to get it, that obviously there's a lot I don't get. So I would appreciate that topic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Nancy, Nancy popped back in. Nancy for 4 years, she's been writing a book. And for 40 years before that, living and having the experience. And Nancy, would you like to speak on what Marilyn just said and tell us about your book?
Well, I can tell us all about my book that's going to be published on May 1st, at another time, really. But yes, I like what you said. Was it Marilyn? About, about could we hear more about what Black people wish white people would understand and do? I would also like something on how do we overcome anti-Blackness? It has to be one of the core themes. To me, I see an intersection between the materialism of the United States and the anti-Blackness. But actually, what can we do about all these stereotypes that people have absorbed about Blackness? How do you fight it?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you overcome it? Yeah, we're committed to doing that, and maybe the arts, maybe people who've spoken about, when you see artistic creations, it shifts your view. If you have a stereotype in your mind, and then you see a creative, let's say Black or brown person or Asian person, doing something, like I saw a documentary about a Black architect. Well, okay, it's not like I thought that I had any reservations about Black architects. I just never heard of one, really. And so it opened my, it just added new images. And I think that imagery is a big obstacle to people changing their emotional associations. It is more than just ideas. It has to get down into people's feelings and people's fears. Anyway, that's kind of pot shots about a lot of different things, but that's what grabs me.
Thank you, Nancy. And Mina has her hand raised, and then Tom.
I think Diane and I have been having a lot of conversations around what it actually means to be in community with each other. And so I'm looking forward to exploring that a bit more, where we build community with some intention while allowing space for people to define and shape what being in community means with one another. And Sundiata, like that video, both videos were amazing. And I feel like there must have been so much work and time and creativity that went into that. And also recognizing everyone's contributions and really representing that collective mind and spirit that you were talking about. And when I saw it was like going into a time portal, honestly, in a good way. But when I saw the cultural appropriation event that you and I did together, it reminded me of one that we actually didn't record around accountability. And I think when we presented that, it was around like how to take accountability for your racism and internalized racism. And I wonder if like incorporating some more of those discussions centered around like what does it mean to show up? What does it take? What does it mean to reflect, apologize, and repair? Like how do we move together in a way that that supports each other while we're, you know, sitting in the fire and also learning from each other?
I'll just, I know we have many other wonderful things to do. I'll just quickly say I love it, what everyone is talking about. Thank you for all of that. One thing that I was resonating with and kind of don't want to lose sight of is Renee's comment earlier about, in this case, Black youth, just, you know, very much already imagining a world where things work differently. They're creating different structures. And I see this all the time with my students, the kind of the way they expect that everyone else will just get it and we can just move into those systems that they're creating. And so one of the things I just always want to do, and I would love to commit to and perhaps help with social media the way that Renee talked about, is just how do we further supporting youth who actually are creating new structures, and they need us to support them. Black youth and queer youth, of course.
I've been trying to raise my hand, but somehow my system is not getting it. But I'd like to respond to some of the conversation and accountability for one's own racism. I think that I think there could be some focus on how some people's perceptions work against their own best interests. And I think, at least from my point of view, this past election shows that. But one of the things that might be considered in the future, I realize that we reside all over the place, but RJ might think about perhaps sometimes in the next few years having a big conference where people can actually come and meet each other if possible. And I'll stop there. There are a lot of things that I've heard here that sound very interesting, and I'm looking forward to see how the organization develops.
Thank you, Annie. Put that on my heart. I love that idea of having a big conference. I used to create a lot of those for other organizations. We could do one for ourselves. Thank you, Annie. I see 3 hands raised, and Greg, and then Thomas, TC, and thank you, Francine.
And I'm sorry, but just before we go, because I'm going to have to take off, I apologize, but I just want to thank everybody for coming to this event, for coming to all of our events over the years, the past year, however long you've been traveling with us. I really appreciate seeing everybody here and seeing everybody involved in what we're doing. And I look forward to seeing everyone involved and learning what you want to do for next year so that we can help make that a possibility. And I really appreciate it because I know on a Saturday you can be anywhere. And the fact that you took the time to be with us means the world to me. So with that said, I'm going to wish everybody a happy rest of your 2024. and I'll see you in 2025. Thank you.
Take care, Frank.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Frank. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, big bro.
So
Love you
I'm,
too.
now I'm the host. So now it's Greg. Thanks, Frank.
I think the idea, something I'd like to see in 2025 is the public profile of RJC raised through the media. In particular, look at what Diane did with Let's Talk About Race on radio. What's to stop us from utilizing public access channels in our communities to have a monthly or bi-monthly show, although I don't like the word, the RJC show, but it is what it is, to raise the awareness of what RJC is doing. And I think, I think there will be a strong reaction one way or the other to raising the RJC public profile through local media. As I said, Diane did it with Let's Talk About Race, and it can be done again via, public access, and in your own communities. I mean, if we do it in Somerville, it can be recorded and played on your local public access stations if you're a resident of a particular community.
If we do it in Somerville over the public access, you can all be there. It can be a live program. It'll go all over the world.
Right.
So thank you, Greg. We can definitely make that happen.
Good. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. And TC.
I think what I would ask next year that the RJC look at a RJC survival kit. If this man talks about what he's going to do on day one, and what we're doing locally or instead of nationally, we're telling folk to prepare. One, buy identified generators that you can hook up to your home in case there's power loss. If you have cash on hand in your house. How do you provide enough dry goods so you can survive 30 to 60 days without having access to stores? We're even talking about how you defend your home. I'm talking about just a survival kit of things that you need. Do you have a freezer where you can have foodstuffs? I'm all the way left. I think this man going to do some things, and folks aren't going to have access to the things that they need. So if you don't have it yourself, be it belong to a community where we can share one with the other. And even lastly, we talking about having CB. So if our phone system go down, we can talk to each other via a CB to say what's going on, how are you doing. That's a survival kit to look at what does that look like, and being in what that means legally. I mean, how to access legal services if you need them. But that type of survival kit, so folk know that these are some things I need to be looking at in 2025 so I can sustain myself and my family and my loved ones in my local community.
You see, that's great. I never thought of anything like that, but a survival kit. I haven't thought about that, but I thought about two things. I said, okay, we're in the Northeast. You see, today it's like what, 30 or 30, so it's cold. And it wouldn't take, all we have to do is lose our electricity. Or it's electricity, you can't even turn on your heat if you have gas. It wouldn't take, it would, and will be chaotic because we haven't thought about the possibility of any of that. So forearmed is forewarned. So putting together something, so we need a think tank on that. So
Diane, I'll share with you what we developed.
Okay.
And you can use it to the best of your ability and add to it or subtract as you see fit. But I just think that that's something that we're going to need across the country and maybe around the world. But if this man does what he doesn't want to do on day one, it could go crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, I'm somewhat of a storyteller, so I was watching this show. Many of you, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of Francine.
Yeah,
Go
let
ahead, Francine.
Francine had her hand up, so then
You did.
Suzanne, go back.
Yeah.
Francine.
Okay. Yes. I just want a quick comment on whoever spoke just a moment ago about survival preparedness. I just kind of consciously or unconsciously started trading fruit and vegetables with a neighbor who has, we have oranges, he has lemons, we have lemons as well, but just he had some squash. He was Chinese. He didn't like the large squash, so I said, I'll take those. That was a way of him giving something back, and so we've just been going back and forth. And I noticed one day his girlfriend's kids, he had them cut one of the squashes and bring them over to my house. So he was teaching them to also like trade or share. So I noticed that already it like skipped to the next generation. You know, what I was doing, I could visibly see that was a very effective way of creating a relationship with the neighbor. But I also was, in my mind, I was thinking of survival preparedness. If we have to survive something, we may need to be able to trade and barter with each other. You know, money may not have any as much value. If things get really bad, we might have to barter, you know, and help each other out. I'll do this for you. There's no like money or anything like that being discussed, but anyway, but it's a neighborly thing. You know, my mom grew up on a farm, and that's what they did. You helped the next farm over, you helped them with their crops, they helped you bring in your crops. Sometimes you got paid depending on the laborers, but they bartered. So I put in the chat, I'm interested in child development. Like, how is the social trauma of racism? How does it affect people into their adulthood? The diseases people are suffering from as a result. I mean, on all sides of this, you know, I've seen people die of cancer and stuff like that. My great grandmother was a what they call a death doula now, and her my grandmother said that white people would call on her, mostly white people, when they were dying because of the bad, evil stuff they did when they were that they were afraid to die from, and they would call on her to ease their death. So I thought that was really whack. You call on a Black woman after you probably lynched Black people or killed them, and you call on a Black woman to somehow be your savior when you're facing death or the Grim Reaper, however people put that. So yeah, so she was this death doula as one of her titles, whatever they call it today. So I'm also embarrassed by the ignorance that I was educated in the school system with regards to racism, and that people outside the US seem to know more about our history. And when I've had occasion to travel, the first question people ask me is, how are things in the USA? Then I notice that I always have to compartmentalize my answer. Like, do they really want to know about the racism, or is that just a polite question like good morning?
Thank you, Francine. Those are all everything, everybody's suggestions, like the trade and barter, get right down to what's really needed and how can we do that. And that's the way everything started, right?
Right. I'm actually signed up for a course in San Francisco at a city college to take a childhood development course looking at violence in families. Well, not just violence in families, but what help there is for people. And yeah, so I believe this plays out in families, not just, I don't think you could be racist to somebody and do terrible things and not double back on that with your own family and hurt them as well.
I agree with that. As a former teacher and today's teacher, yes, those type of family kind of ties, they have a lot to do with how those people are being developed and their thoughts and all of that. But I want to, before everybody's bouncing, I see, I don't know if any of you watched Sanford and Son. It was a favorite show of mine when I was growing up. And recently I was watching an episode and they had Fred and Lamont went to get a TB test. And so they sent the mail to their house and Lamont read the mail and said, "Oh yeah, well, I'm fine." Then he read Fred's mail and it said, "Oh, you might have to go in there and check on yourself." And Fred was like, "Oh, I'm gonna die, Elizabeth. I'm coming to save you." So Lamont was making light of it. And he was saying, "Oh, it's probably just a technicality. Calm down, blah, 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 blah." Then Fred said, "Wait a minute. This is not my name. This is your name." When Lamont read it, he was like, "Oh, God, I'm going to die." What that made me think about was how societally people are like that. Until it affects you, until you see it coming your way, you don't really feel the heat that other people are feeling. And now everybody's about to feel some heat, but they've been feeling the heat. They just didn't know it. They were numb to it. It's always been happening. And then when it gets exposed, then we're like, "Oh, what happened?" But it's always been there. So, yeah, a very good conversation today. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to say, and it doesn't have to be directly diagonal to it could be something else as a result of the racism. There was a drug dealer. I didn't know this guy was a drug dealer. I thought he was an artist, but people later said he somebody wrote an article about him, like the hippie pimp or something like that. He was involved in a lot of stuff. But he said, I was raised. I said, what was your earlier occupation? He said, I got up in the morning early, got dressed, and I went out and mugged a few people, and that was my job for the day. And I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no, I'm telling you the truth. He said, my family was a gangster family, and they raised me to believe that robbing people was like, okay, you know. And then he said, later in life, he said, I noticed the things that I was involved in were directly affecting my two daughters. And he said that was when I saw the karmic effect of what I was doing was directly affecting them. That every time they got into a relationship, everything went terribly bad. And he said, I gave it up for that. I stopped all my licentious stuff because of that. You see, it wasn't, but I mean, I'm sure there's a racism story in there somewhere. But because he told me, he said, my family was never enslaved. I was indigenous to this country. So that's another whole story altogether. I mean, he's got skin my complexion and he's telling me we're indigenous. That was another story I was not told growing up. That was part of my social development. And that's painful. You know, it's like, really, my whole life, they told us all Black, you know, when I was growing up, all Black people were slaves, have descendants that are slaves, when actually they weren't all enslaved in this country. And that just blew my mind. And I had to it took me a while to digest that, you know, that lie, the lie. I'm dealing with the lie part right now. I'm with an organization that I filed a complaint against one of their teachers. This was like cranial practice. And I was asked to look at the, could I say how this teacher was racist towards me when she referred me to a school in another state? And I said, do you really want me to define racism for you? And she said, no, I don't want you to define racism, but how could I not answer that question without having some sort of belief or understanding about racism? And our communication is terribly off because she's not telling me anything about what her belief is. So I sat with that a while, and then I just thought, okay, we're at the lie point. So now I'm sitting with the lie associated with the racism, and what I'm noticing, I have to sit with whatever little pieces come up that make up the drama of what's happening, and how it's affected me, and you know, money, social, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. But I have to sit with each of those little pieces and get and come present with myself, and then come back and fight. So my poem of the season is Fight Like a Mother.
Thank you, Francine. Very helpful. All your comments, all these comments are helpful.
Indeed.
one of the things that I think about is kind of what we're talking about. If we look at the United States and the baby boom generation, which I'm a part of, baby boomers, and they're all moving out into all kind of assisted living, all kind of, nursery homes or nursing homes, and all kinds of things like that. And who is going to take care of them? And because what are the lowest paid jobs that we have? It's taking care of our elderly in these warehousing opportunities. And so that all of everybody going out is not white. We're all moving into the elderly and beyond. But for the large numbers of white people of all privileged and unprivileged and everybody, they're all going to a lot of them are going to be depending for their food, somebody to feed them, somebody to bathe them. These are going to be Black people. These are going to be Black people that they have, and it's there. It's there. It's all there. You can just imagine that. And so there's some opportunity in that to shape up something. I'm not sure what, but that always seems to me to be significant. We're going to have Black people. If you're white, you're going to have Black people taking care of you, no matter what you've said and how you've talked, and you open your eyes every morning and there's a Black face looking at you. So maybe we need to deal with fear. So, well, this has been lively and informative and great. And I hope that all of you will share with us and really feel excited and energized to share your ideas and to share yourselves all this coming year, and come forward, and we'll together, it's all about together and honesty. I saw honesty, Sundiata, we saw honesty coming up a lot in the videos. And so honesty, being able to talk about race in mixed race groups, honestly. And because that honesty is going to help us to decide or figure out the way forward. So thank you. Thank you all for coming. Anybody have anything before we leave? We're after our time. I try to be respectful of time.
Well,
go
did
ahead.
a story that
Yeah.
I put in there. I said I had a neighbor who said that her retired school teacher parents had to move out of their dream senior community because of the daily remarks regarding racism by white people. Well, this is white people about Black people. So she's Jewish, and she never told me the story of what they were saying about Jewish people. Because if you're a bigot all the way around, like 360 degrees. There's no like stopping at 180 and then you don't finish at 360. So I thought that was kind of curious that she never mentioned what bigoted comments they were making about Jewish people, that she just put it all, looking at me in front of me, she just put it all on Black people. And I'm like, okay, come on. I didn't say anything to her, but I just thought at the time I couldn't think of what to say. But yeah, it was totally absent of what comments might be made against her parents because they were Jewish. So they had to move out. They said they were elderly and they couldn't imagine living the rest of their lives in this community, which also had a skilled nursing facility, finishing out their lives in a place where they had to, and they were fearful of saying anything, by the way, being retaliated against if they spoke up.
This woman was Jewish?
Yeah.
So
But do you get it?
Yeah, I get it. I'm trying
She
to
flipped it on to me like racism is all about Black people. It is, but it in her circumstances for that conversation. She was not willing to talk about the racist comments about because I've heard them myself about Jewish people. It was almost like in a way, she was like trying to be hip by saying, oh, I've got these parents that they moved out of this community because they couldn't stand what was being said about Black people when they're Jewish. And I know, this was not a Jewish nurse senior place. It was open to any seniors, that they had to have made remarks about other cultures, perhaps even Jewish, but she just singled that. That didn't feel good to me, by the way. Like they moved out, they're so great. They moved out because of the comments about Black people. Give me a break. They had to be making comments about other people too, but am I supposed to feel good about that? Or are you hip because your parents moved out because of Black people? That's not a complete story, actually, and it sounds like you were you're expecting me to be blind on what you're communicating to me. Like I'm not going to feel that. I'm not going to notice that you are just now targeting me as a Black person. But once again, that bigoted people only make comments about Black people, center on Black people.
Right.
Lastly, I think if young people are going to be part of the dialogue, the development of a biracial children. My nephew he's biracial, and we're a lot alike, and he became, at the first stage of understanding Blackness, he became angry, and he talked about white people all the time. I said, man, your mom is white, and you're saying this to your mom, and your grandfather who loves you is white. Now, me being me, I said, these are your people. In that development of understanding who you are is at that anger period, but how you develop, how you socialize with your mother, your grandparents, your uncles, that was an interesting dynamic. And then when he gets to a point where, okay, my mom loves me, but she white, and I don't like white people. Can't stand them. I was like, man, you need to maybe tone that down a little bit or work on that. Let's talk more about that. And now we laugh about it. But he was just like his dad's just like me. I'm like, okay, that's part of that dynamic, but we need to work on that in terms of your skill set so you can have a better relationship. Maybe that's my own stuff, but I'm like, man, that's your mom, that's your granddad. So let's figure out how we say what we say, but say it in a way that we can still be in relationship.
Wow. That's key. How do we, just what we're doing. Now look at what we're doing. We're talking about race and all these issues, but we're talking about it and we're building on relationship, not tearing down the possibility. So Nancy suggested that we could expand from the survival kit to an emotional survival kit. So thank you, everybody. And we'll send something out soon saying something. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And we look forward to seeing you all. Again, if you have any things you want to say, email me. That would be great. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Thanks, everyone.
holidays.